it's bad enough that you're a woman, but if you try and do humor-based work on top of that, you will never be taken seriously.
What were you doing in town? Where were you today?
My nephew goes to school here, and the art department is amazing, and the teacher followed me, and when she realized that Jonah was my nephew, she was like, okay, hold on. So now I've been there every semester for the last year and a half, and so it's their arts week this week. So I was with grade 7s today, and I will be with grade 5s all day tomorrow, and then I'm going to do a workshop with all of the teachers after school. So it's going to be a long day, but it'll be good.
Awesome. And then are you flying somewhere?
Then I leave at 3 in the morning to go to California for a road trip / inspiration thing with my best friend who's an artist in Southern Oregon, and we have grand plans for a new podcast. Ooh. And a whole bunch of different things. But I said we could do it over Zoom, or we could go on a road trip and drink coffee and go to thrift shops and hang out together. So that's what I'm doing.
So your podcast will be doing that?
Well, we're planning the podcast over treats and coffee. Okay. That's very important.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to start. So that's you. You can see you. Oh, wait, yeah.
These are my outfit.
I did. Yeah. Whatever. My wife made me. I don't want to talk about it.
I'm an influencer.
Yeah.
Okay? But you see what I'm pointing at is my tiny, tiny Beyonce mic.
Yeah.
I was super excited about that.
This was a TED Talk, right?
Yeah, that was my TED Talk. And I got but I was more excited about the Beyonce mic than anything.
No, it is more
impressive.
impressive.
They made me give it back.
Okay, Danielle, you're going to have to explain this one.
Oh, my God.
It says Dirty Danielle, if you can't read that.
I love Dirty Dancing. I've seen it over 100 times.
Yeah.
This was my going away card when I left Taxi, when I worked at Taxi in Toronto.
So Taxi is an ad agency.
An ad agency in Toronto. And this was my goodbye card. And so one of the talented designers swapped me in for Baby, and I got to be Dirty Danielle. And I still have this card because I thought it was the best thing ever.
So look
how happy I am.
I know.
Baby was never that happy.
No. What do you think of when you see that place?
There's little
trauma.
Yeah.
So this is where we worked together on the red umbrellas that was the top floor. I had the corner suite. It was just a cubicle that I don't know. And Danielle, you were close to the elevators, right? Just to get out of here. So what comes to mind when you see that? Like, how do you feel? Is it?
It's being filmed. I feel good.
Oh.
I had a hard time there, honestly.
Yeah.
I'd come from Toronto to Vancouver for this job to become a creative director, which was sort of my goal for a long time. I'd worked in advertising for a long time as a designer, and I wanted to be in web design, and I wanted to be the creative director of a web group. And so that happened. But, we were adjusting to a new city and trying to find somewhere to live, and I don't know. It felt a bit bumpy, and then I got into the groove and then got pregnant and left and decided to never return to advertising ever again.
Can you talk a bit about what you told me beforehand? What happened?
Yeah. So, can I do the show of hands thing? Yeah. How many people here work in advertising or in marketing? A lot. So this was 19 years ago when I left, and my husband and I, he worked there too. He was a strategist, and we met years ago. We worked together at IBM in Toronto. We worked at Taxi together. We were a team, and then tried to get pregnant, got pregnant, and I told them that I was going to be taking a mat leave, and I found out through Dick Haddon. Anybody know Dick? That the big boss, who I don't even remember his name, and I'm not sure where he is, if he's still alive or not, but he had said, and then Dick told me, quote, goddamn women in the workplace, don't give them a management position because they'll just go and get knocked up. And I said, goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I don't think I'm coming back. I didn't say that out loud. I got my mat leave. But I just thought, I don't think, like, how can I go back when was the culture of the higher ups? It wasn't the culture in this office, but I don't know. I didn't feel good.
Well, even today, it's something like 11% of all creative directors in marketing and advertising. Only 11% are women. Yeah, exactly. So back then, did you have the motivation to, like, I'm going to write several books and do this blog? Like, was it like creating for yourself? Like, why did that start?
Oh, well, I'd gone to art school. Originally, the plan was to become an artist, and things went terribly, terribly wrong at art school. And some of you know that story already.
Wait, Danielle. Let's talk about jerks. There.
Here we go. Here's the segue.
Yeah.
Yep. I know some of you know this story. You're just going to hear it again, though. But yeah, so I was the art kid growing up. That was, people would pay me 25 cents to draw Garfield. So see me after the show if you want one. Inflation, it's $1 now. So that was my identity. Everybody knew me that way. And then so when it was time to go to university, of course, I went for marine biology because it seemed crazy and irresponsible to go for art. My dad was a PhD scientist and my mom was an artist. And I don't know, maybe subconsciously I saw my mom struggling. I don't know. So I just decided I would be responsible and I would go for science. So I did, and then at the end of my first year, my dad, God love him, said, what are you doing? He said, you've been an artist since you were born. It's just who you are. You need to switch. And I said, well, what about like food and rent? Mm-hmm. And he said, you know what? It doesn't matter. He said, do what you love and the money will come. And if it doesn't, you won't care because you'll be happy. So I switched to fine art. So excited. I could not wait for September. Like, the art kid was back. I got there, and it all went terribly wrong for the next 3 years. It was very conceptual. This was early 90s, so everybody was wearing, like, it was grunge and, like, goth, and I am pretty sure on day one I was wearing an Esprit sweater set. With, like, flowers on it, probably. But at the same time, I was so confident. Like, I totally believed in myself, and I didn't care that I wasn't wearing black and whatever, and I was just like, nah, I'm good. But critique after critique. How many people have been through an art school critique? Thank you, my people. Yeah. And so I was telling the kids today, the grade 7s, we were talking about this, and I said, what I learned from those critiques was how to defend my work, which served me so well in pitches. In advertising, when you're pitching to a client, right? Like, it helped me when I was designing, because I would be thinking about, okay, what could they fight against? The font. Like, I had a reason for my color choices. I had a reason for everything, because in art school, if I just put something up in a crit, I would just get destroyed. So if I had thought through why I was doing the things, I had a better shot at fighting back. I also got really good at being composed while being torn apart, so that I could still defend myself. I could still speak about what I wanted to speak about. So those, at the time, it felt like a nightmare, but in hindsight, really, really helped me in my career and speaking about my art even now. However, in my fourth year, I was a painting major. We were given our own studios. I didn't even paint there. I carried my canvases back and forth to the dorm because I just did not want people to be looking at me. I did not want, I didn't really have any friends. I was just like, I hated it. So I would just go back to the dorm, do my work there. So 6 weeks before I graduated, I'd been working on this work sort of in a silo, and I brought it for the Thursday critique as, like, here's what my grad show is. Hung it up on the wall, and this professor, who was the head of the painting department, who never liked me the whole entire time, I put the work up. He loved it. He said I'd found a new niche. And he went on and on and on about how amazing it was. And I thought, oh my gosh, finally, like 6 weeks before graduating with a Bachelor of Fine Arts, I've got it, you know. And so he said the following week there would be an artist coming from New York. And this was in Victoria. So this was a big deal. And this was somebody we'd studied in art history, was coming to our classroom. And he said there was time for 3 10-minute crit reviews. Who wanted to go? Well, nobody wanted to go. But I had just found a new niche. So I volunteered. And so the following Thursday, I carried the same paintings across campus, and I hadn't touched them. I went first, hung them up, and was immediately torn to shreds by the prof who a week before had said he had loved it. And all of my defense skills went out the window. I was so embarrassed. We were sitting in like a U shape, just on garbage cans and stuff, and I was on this end of the U, and then everybody was kind of there, and then the visiting artist was on that end, and the prof was kind of back here. And I couldn't, you know when you get that lump in your throat, and you know that if one word comes out, you're just going to be like, and I thought, oh, hell no, I am not crying in front of these people. Like, no, I've made it this far. I'm not going to cry. It was supposed to be 10 minutes. It went for 30 minutes. At one point, the visiting artist had just turned and was just watching me. He wasn't even looking at the work.
It was another man. It was two men.
And he was just watching me react. And it just went on and on and on. It was horrible. And then with about 3 minutes left in this 30-minute extravaganza, the painting prof, who was the head of the painting department, said, "You should never paint again." And then I graduated with a painting degree and moved. My parents had just moved to Ontario, so I followed them and moved into their basement and cried there for about a year. My dad, again, God love him, said, "Let me be your patron. Don't get a summer job." He bought me canvases and paint. He set up the laundry room like a little studio, and he said, "Just paint. Get up every day like it's your job and just paint." Like he just wanted me to get my groove back, right? And I tried, and every time I tried, all I could hear was, "You should never paint again." Every brushstroke, every idea, every color choice, everything was just like, "You should never paint again. You should never paint again." And after a while, years, I quit making art for 15 years. And if I ever tried, I tried one time when I lived in Toronto. I was dating Greg, my now husband. Well, we didn't live together. I had a tiny closet, and I set up this little studio. He didn't even know it was in there. I would just close the door. He thought it was like a closet. And I would make paintings at night after working at Taxi. I'd come home and make tiny little paintings. And you know when you're working at like 1 a.m. and you're like, "I'm a fucking genius." Like,
no.
You like, talk about a new niche, people. It's happening at 1 a.m. Yeah. And then you wake up in the morning and look at it and you're like, "Oh, no. And so, not to make light of eating disorders in any way, but it was felt like creative bulimia, in that I would make the stuff and then I would throw it out, and no one even knew it existed. My husband didn't even know that I had done this, because how dare I make art? I should never paint again. And I thought, if people find out that I'm making this mediocre, like, I don't know, I had so much shame around it. And so it wasn't really until Charlie was born that it was watching him. And I was saying this to the kids today, you remember when we were little? I remember this clearly. I lived in Nova Scotia when I was in kindergarten, and I was walking home from school, and there was a feather on the ground. And I was like, "Oh, yes. I'm going to take this home and put glitter on it and probably glue it to some construction paper. And my mom will put it on the fridge." And, at no point are you thinking, "I wonder if galleries are into glitter."
Is it good enough?
I wonder if I'll get into grad school with this feather. Like, you're just like, that is a thing, and there will be glue, and it will be amazing. And having Charlie and staying home with him and not, dropping at daycare. And who's been with a 2-year-old all day, every day? It really tests you. But what was amazing was that he just was creative. We're born that way, right? He didn't second guess anything. One day he was in his diaper and we were painting. And he said, "Mommy, I paint me." And I said, "Sure, buddy," thinking he was going to do a painting of himself. Nope. He painted him. And I was like, "I don't have a job. Knock yourself out. Like, we've got all day." And so then I picked him up and I took him to the shower and I rinsed it all off. And then the next morning he said, "Mommy, I paint me again?" And I said, "You bet, buddy. Let's go." And so this is what he did. And I remember feeling jealous of a 2-year-old because I was like, why can't I just let go? Like, why can't I just paint me? Like, why can't I just have fun again? And I had completely forgotten how. And it took the next sort of 13 years after that to find that again.
Well, because on top of, you had outer critics, but like most people, you have, this is Arlo.
Arlo, yeah.
Who's Arlo is your inner critic.
Yes.
You've named your inner critic Arlo.
Yeah.
And so what relationship, how does that? So like you've had outer critics, we all have an inner critic. What role does Arlo play in your life, or especially early on, I guess?
The thing was, I didn't know. So after art school and all that second guessing, I didn't talk to anybody about it. And nobody at art school ever talked about blocks or inner critics or anything. So I thought I was literally the only person in the world that had that voice that said, "You suck." I did not know that every human in the world has that for whatever it is that they are wishing that they were good at. I thought that creative blocks meant that you should quit. I thought it meant that you had no ideas. I didn't realize that a creative block was just part of the process. So for me, I had no word for it. I just thought I was not supposed to do it. And then it wasn't until I started the Jealous Curator, really, that I started having these conversations. And that's why events like this are so important. It's the conversations. It's realizing that none of us are alone, that we're all in this together. But at art school, no one talked about it because nobody wanted to look like they didn't know what they were doing. And so, it just sort of built up steam. Arlo got some traction in there. And I didn't name him until Jealous Curator was well established. This was just a few years ago, 2016. And I was teaching a theater workshop, like a 5-day like Shakespeare festival thing with high school students from all around British Columbia. And so, what? Oh, no. I thought somebody knew what it was, Shake Fest. And so I was writing Your Inner Critic Is a Big Jerk, and I don't like the term inner critic because it already sounds negative. And so I was trying to think of something else to call it. And so I asked these kids, 14 to 17, like, what do you guys call that little voice? And sadly, they all knew exactly what I meant by that little voice. And so they had swear words and mini-me. And then this one kid goes, "Oh, I call mine Arlo." And I was like, I love that, and I am stealing it. And so now part of whenever I do talks, I always tell people, and I'll tell you guys before you leave here tonight, to name your inner critic a name, because when it's just your inner critic, and it's just these floaty negative thoughts, you believe that it's part of you. You believe it as a truth, because you're thinking it over and over. But if it's just Arlo, or Bill, or,
Alan.
Janine, Alan.
Mine's Alan.
There you go. Whoever they are. And it's like sometimes they're people you know. Arlo is nobody. I just stole it from a child. But like one lady in a workshop I did, I guess her mother-in-law is quite harsh. Her name is Ruth, so she named hers Ruthless Ruth. I tell little kids, name it Mr. Fuzzy Bunny, whatever, like just something that's not threatening, so that you can, when you're working and you hear that voice, you can be like, it's just Arlo. And you can be like, you know what, you need to sit down because I'm busy right now. So that's where Arlo came from. And so Arlo and I are getting along a lot better.
Yeah.
He's getting quieter, slightly supportive. I was telling the kids again today that a huge part of it is translating. So when you hear your inner critic, sometimes it's right. Very often what your inner critic is saying is right, but it's delivered in such a rude way that it stops you in your tracks, right? But if you can be friends enough with it, Alan or Arlo, and when it says, like, so for me, I'm a collage artist, if it says, like, "Oh my God, this is a hot mess," instead of being like, "Yeah, it is a hot mess," and throwing it away and closing the closet door, I can say, "Thank you, Arlo, for your interpretation," and then look at it and be like, it is kind of a mess, but what I love is this one corner. Or I'm loving the palette, so I'm going to start again, but I'm going to go with the things that I love, and I'm going to remove the messiness because he was right.
That's cool. It's like treating it almost like feedback we would get back in the ad days.
Yeah, totally. But you just have to translate it, because mine is very mean.
Yeah.
And a lot of people's is very
Yeah.
mean. And so you just, instead of taking it as word and as truth, you take it as feedback from an asshole, and then you translate what it's actually saying into something that is going to keep you moving forward. Because in all of this stuff with Inner Critic, it's you that needs to be in charge of this narrative, in charge of this conversation. Because for 15 years, I let my inner critic be in charge, and I just completely shut down.
Yeah, you can't let your brain lead the process. You are in charge. If you do, then it takes you to dark places. So the Jealous Curator kind of begins in spite of all of this. You kind of reframe jealousy. I have this is a quote from you. If you keep jealousy inside, it becomes toxic. But if you say it out loud in a positive way, you can transform it into admiration. And really, I mean, I love the name from the get-go, the Jealous Curator, before Instagram and Pinterest, when it was just a blog. I think we went to see David Sedaris. It was you, me, MJ, and Jill.
Yeah.
And I know you were already doing it. I was instantly inspired that it wasn't just you creating. You had created a brand, which I'm sure was inspired from your background. But it's also like when you talk about your inner critic and keeping it to yourself, you feel like you're the only one who has it. But even being jealous is admitting some of your insecurity. And when you get it out into the open is how you connect and grow. What has your relationship been like with the name and having jealous in there?
Well, it's so funny. I'm so glad Greg's not here tonight, because this is his quote. He said this. I completely take credit for it everywhere I go. Yeah. But he actually said that to me because I was home with Charlie. I was so frustrated by wanting to be creative and not being creative. And this was before Instagram and stuff, but the internet existed. So I was Googling artists in New York and whatever, and I was finding all these people that I loved, and I was truly jealous. I was jealous not only of their work, but that they were making. I wasn't even making anything. Yeah. Some of them had studios. Can you imagine that? Like, I was angry. And I made it angry about them, but I was really angry at me. And so Greg, again, he was so sweet. And we were out. It was our first lunch out. Charlie was 2, and we finally went out for lunch together alone. And we were talking about all this, and he said, you're so jealous of these people. And he's like, it's kind of eating you alive. And he said, you need to flip the script on this. This was end of 2008. So everyone and their dog had a blog at the end of 2008. And he said, and he was a social media strategist by this point, or like an internet strategist. So he said, why don't you start a blog and just start writing about the people that you love, but write it in a positive way and see how it goes. And I mean, nobody's reading it. I had Google Analytics on there. Well, Greg put it on there. I don't even know how to do that. And I would go and check it every day, and there'd be 6 views. For the longest time, there were 6 views. It would be my dad twice, my husband twice, and me twice every day. And then one day I went on there, and there was 43 views, and 23 of them were from New York. And I didn't know anyone in New York at the time. And then Danielle, the creative director, kicked in, and I was like, there will be a schedule. And like I got, because before I was just sort of writing whenever Charlie napped. But it was really fast. It was like a month. It was like a month of writing before the jealousy started to lift. I would find artists that I loved, and instead of feeling like that kind of crushing, like, oh, everything's been done already in every color better than I could ever do it, I'd be excited because I had tomorrow's post. And the other thing that Greg pointed out, because he has a degree in computer science, so he is a pattern finder in everything he does. And you know that thing where you find someone that you love, and if you don't have your own creative voice, this is in writing and music and art, anything, if you don't have your own point of view, you'll see something that you love, and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to do that. And then you see something else, and you're, I'm gonna go over there. And that's what I was doing. And I was like, what? I felt like a crazy person, and I was like, what is even my point of view? Like, I don't have one. I'm just this mom, in sweatpants with spit up on me, and like, what am I even trying to do here? And he said, start this blog, be committed to it, and then start to look for patterns.
Well, because the thing is that I've found is Like, I think for too long I was waiting for the right idea to come.
Yeah.
And then I would create.
Right.
But like, you find yourself through creating, if you don't know what to make, just make anything.
Make
And
anything.
it seems like this is
well,
what's happening.
and that's what I found when I'd written maybe for 2 months. And then I went back and I scrolled through the whole thing. And I recommend this to anybody. If you're feeling kind of lost, like with your creative voice, go and start a Pinterest board, a private one, so that you don't feel like it's out there. And just start collecting things you love. And it might be art, it might be shoes, it might be like a whole bunch of different things. Do it for a month. And then go scroll through it with a notepad and write down the things you start to see. Like, you're going to notice a color palette pop up right away. You're going to notice that maybe you love negative space. You're going to start to notice, mine, I started to realize everything had a bit of a wink to it. Everything was a little bit funny, all the art I was writing about. Because in art school, I don't know if I told you this the other day, that same professor who told me to never paint again, my work was quite funny in art school, which did not fly. And as you guys can tell, I'm hilarious. And so this professor had said to me, this is a direct quote, "Look, it's bad enough that you're a woman, but if you try and do humor-based work on top of that, you will never be taken seriously." So I stripped all the humor out of my work in 1995. And then here with my blog, I started to notice that all the artists I was writing about were funny. And it made me realize, it's just like, what? Like, I have to let myself back in. And that's what setting up the Pinterest board, you start to see the things that you truly love, and you can make your own little creative recipe, really, out of all those things that you love. And when you put them all together and just make something, there's your creative voice. You start to make things that look uniquely like you because you're only choosing the things that you really love.
I'm glad you didn't take jealousy this way, Daniel. I was thinking that could be the movie that you write, just take it a whole other way.
Thank God for blogs.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so these are like early signs you were onto something. Was that once Instagram started, or was it the blog? Like, you're like, hey, I'm going to keep doing this. Like, this could be something.
Yeah, it was the blog. Like, my favorite thing about it was, one, the jealousy started to go right away. I started to feel lighter and happier. I started to see the things I wanted to make. But the biggest thing, because back in the day with blogs, people commented, right? And I started getting comments. And my tagline at the time, so it was the Jealous Curator, and the tagline was, "Damn, I wish I thought of that." Because anytime I saw work and thought that would be my post for tomorrow. You know that feeling where you're just like, oh my God, it was so simple. How did I not think of that? And so that was my tagline. So many people got it. And this was my first time. I mean, I was scared of artists because art school had been so bad. And so suddenly there was these people who were like, "Me too." And I was like, really? And, I started to have like this tiny following, but they were mighty, and probably some of them are here, I bet, that have been here since the beginning, and they were my people. And I didn't know I had people. Like, I didn't know there was other people who were like, yeah, I think, damn, I wish I thought of that all the time. And that was what kept me going. I didn't care about anything else. I was just finding my people and finding my way, and it felt like personal therapy, which was the whole point. I never planned to have an audience. This was just for me to get back on track. And then all of this, it just snowballed. Like,
I mean, it wasn't even a thing, building an audience, really, back then. I mean, when you started the blog, there was no Instagram or Pinterest, right?
No, Pinterest hadn't even been invented yet. Yeah.
Look at that logo.
Yeah.
That's when you probably started.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a bit about just how much, because I know for me, I create on a way less sexy platform called LinkedIn, but I don't consume much content. And obviously, you want to be creating over consuming. So for you on Instagram or in social media in general, like, what is your relationship like with
I loved Instagram immediately just because it's visual. Like, everybody, like, Twitter was around at the same time. And I went on Twitter because you're supposed to, but I was just never there. And Instagram, I was like, ooh, pretty pictures. The way I use it right now is a way to find artists to write about. So I'm on there a lot, but I don't really engage. Like, I don't comment a ton. I don't go down any rabbit hole, like unless they're visual rabbit holes, but I don't let myself get caught up in discussions that have gone off the rails. And basically I do one post a day on Instagram, I post it, and then I'm out.
You like engage with comments and stuff?
I don't anymore. I like them all. And if something's really hilarious, I'll do a little ha ha ha. But I just find that otherwise my whole I would never get off of Instagram, and I don't want to. And when I have a studio in my house now, in my basement, that's bigger than the closet, and I go down there and I don't. I have my phone because sometimes I like to document what I'm doing, but I don't go on Instagram when I'm down there.
I mean, focus is a huge skill in itself.
Yeah.
Like they say like it's 95% of it, because we're just, especially now, so easily distracted.
Well, because I have so many things going on. We were talking before about, how do I describe myself, and it's like artist and author, but also podcast, but also this, but also this, but mother, like all these things. And so for a long time now, I've really had to compartmentalize my days. So if I'm working on a new book right now, and I'll have to decide that like Tuesday and Wednesday are book day. And that's all I'm doing. And I'm not going to feel guilty that I'm not going to the studio because I had decided ahead of time that those are book days. And when I'm in the studio, I've decided that is studio time, and I'm not going to feel guilty that I'm not writing tomorrow's post, or I'm not working on the book, or I'm not baking cookies, or whatever I think I'm supposed to be doing, because I have blocked off that time. And so I have to be off my phone for those things too, because otherwise there goes studio time.
Oh, I know. Like, I need to get better at that. These are the Jealous Curator and Danielle Krysa, her art, the two Instagram accounts that she runs. I want to talk about your first book, and was this one, Creative Block, and like, where did the writing side of things come from for you?
Oh, Dan. Yeah. So this was about a year and a half into the blog. I got asked to speak at a blogging conference. It was called Alt Summit. It's still happening, actually, but it was like all the girl bloggers, and it was very exciting that I got to speak. And I was at this little this little wine and cheese thing, and an editor from Chronicle Books came up to me, and I hadn't shown my face yet. My logo is basically my face with a Polaroid picture over it. And she came up to me and said, "Are you the Jealous Curator?" And I was like, "Oh my God." Like that had never happened before. And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "I've been following your blog." And I was like, "Oh, cool." And she said, "I'm an editor at Chronicle Books in San Francisco. Have you ever thought about writing a book?" And I was like, "What?"
Had you not?
I did not ever think of that. No. But it's always been on my bucket list, dream. But I'm not trained as a writer. I'm not, that wasn't the side of the office that I sat on, right? I sat on the art director side. And so she's like, "Okay, well," I was coming to San Francisco a few weeks later. She said, "Why don't you bring a pitch?" And I was like, "Excellent." And then I went home and Googled, what is a book pitch? What do I do? Yeah. And so I went with two pitches. One was just kind of like a really pretty coffee table book, and one was Creative Block. And the intro, actually, the first couple sentences of this book say, when people study psychology, it's usually because they have stuff they need to work out. Mm-hmm. I'm writing a book about creative blocks because I need to figure this out for me. And so I said, I want to talk to 50 artists from around the world, all different backgrounds, all different mediums, because the difference between them and me is that when I get blocked, I quit. And they clearly don't, because they must get blocked because they're human. But they have shows, and they have collectors, and they have obligations. So it's like, how the hell? I just want to know. I was like, I don't care if anyone buys this book. I just want these answers for me. And they bought the book, which I couldn't believe. I remember just thinking, you know what? It was an honor being nominated. They asked me to pitch. I pitched, and then the editor called and said, "Yep, the board bought it. You're writing a book." And I was like, holy shit. Yeah. Now what? Yeah. And my mom's not here, so I can tell this story. She's not going to watch the YouTube. Okay. But I was so it came out. It did really well. Oprah's people called. It was written about in Oprah magazine. They flew me down to LA to do a bunch of stuff on Oprah.com. Like, it was bonkers. I'd never been to New York before, and I was going to be doing an author event in New York, and it was my 40th birthday, and it was like all crazy. And I said to my mom, "Oh my God, I'm doing this author event in New York," and she's like, and she's my biggest fan, so proud of me. She's like, "This is so exciting." She's like, "Who's the author?" And I was like, me. And she's like, "Well, no, you're not the author."
Yeah.
She said, "It's a Q&A."
Yeah.
She said, the reason this book is doing so well is because the answers that the artists gave are so good.
Yeah. You should never write again, kind of thing.
Never write again. And I was telling the kids about this today because sometimes the things that your inner critics say come from people who love you so much. And if she was here tonight, I would not have told that story because it would have broken her heart, because she didn't mean to put that seed in my head. But then when I wrote the next book, Your Inner Critic Is a Big Jerk, that I actually wrote, I realized when I was traveling for that book that I would say that. I would be like, "Oh, Creative Block was my first book. It's a Q&A. And this book I wrote." And then a couple more years after that, I was like, "Nope, I can't do it. I wrote that book." But something gets planted by somebody else, and and I'm already thinking I'm not trained as a writer. And then my mom was like, "Oh, by the way, you're not trained as a writer." And then you feel like this imposter who wrote a book, and I'm like, "But I did write the book." Yeah. It's just so confusing, And I'm from a family of academics. Like, my dad has a PhD, my sister went to law school. Like, we go to school to learn things in our family, and I was never trained as a writer. So it took me until about a year ago to say author. Yeah. I wrote a few books. Like, you even said you wrote a book, but you're not an author. It's like, no, but yes, you are. Yeah, because that's what you did. Yeah. Technically, yes, you are. And so it's a very that's my relationship with writing. Yeah. When I did get this did so well that they said, "Would you like to write another one?" And I thought I would just do a follow-up, yet another Q&A. Right. And the editor said, "No, I think you can write this yourself." I was so excited. Now I was a real author. I bought a fluffy turtleneck. My husband still calls it the author sweater because I was like, I think authors probably have fluffy turtlenecks, and a hot pink moleskin notebook because I was pretty sure they had that too. And then I took my laptop down to, I live in the Okanagan, and there's this beautiful lakeside restaurant that my friend owns, and so she's like, "Oh yeah, come in." So I just sat in a booth looking out at the lake, and I opened up my laptop, opened Microsoft Word or whatever it was, and there was the big white rectangle. And then the cursor was like, "Fuck you." And I had a full, I cried, panic attack. And I had signed the contract, but I hadn't been paid yet. I spent the first half hour of my brainstorming session trying to figure out how to get out of this deal. I was like, "It's fine. I'll just tell them I can't do it. I'll just rip up the contract. They haven't paid me yet. Cool. Getting hotter and hotter in my turtleneck. And so I decided to take my own advice, and I embraced it, and I wrote my panic attack. And that ended up being the intro of the book, was I am sitting here freaking out, and my inner critic is saying, "Who do you think you are? Like, there is no way you can write a book. I don't care how many sweaters and notebooks you have, it ain't happening." And I wrote a book.
So what about...
Mom?
Yes. So I'm kind of jumping ahead, but you're working on another book, and what is it? Is it still kind of the same, or is it different, like the process?
No, I am still freaking out. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
It's due in August.
Oh, this is kind of...
How much have I done?
August? I don't know. This is what I found, when I'd committed to, I am finishing this book, I realized what was stopping me was an I don't know. I don't know how to do this. I don't know anything about this. I'm not a writer. I don't know how to write an intro. I don't know. And I realized, because I wanted to quit every single time. And when you reference the artists who are making things, they come up against an I don't know. Everything you want is on the other side of an I don't know, right? And is that kind of, for you, it seems like you realize that early on, and you just, maybe the I don't knows get bigger, but you know what's on the other side of them now, right?
Yeah, I feel like I've proven enough things to myself that I'm like,
right.
I'm pretty good at the whole fake it till you make it thing now. Like, I called myself the Jealous Curator, and then galleries messaged me and said, would you like to curate a show in Washington, D.C.? And I was like, of course. And then I Googled that too, because I was like, I don't know how to curate a show. Yeah. And but my years as a creative director, being a creative director is kind of like curating. There's a lot of spreadsheets. There's a lot of organizing. There's a lot of emailing. There's a lot of visual, making sure it all goes together. I'm like, oh my gosh, I actually do know how to do this. I was telling Dan before we started, I got to speak at PIXAR. They invited me to come and speak to their creative team about creativity. Like, talk about feeling like an imposter, walking into PIXAR. Thank God I was wearing black, because I was sweating so much. It was like, I could feel it trickling down my sides. And I went, and it was a theater like this, and it was mainly men. And they have a really cool theater where it's all couches, like all like sort of love seats. And so they were all just sitting there just like this. And I mean, I was like, as I'm talking, I was like, what am I doing here? Like, I don't know how to talk to PIXAR. I don't know. Like, these people have like, Oscars in their office. Like, what am I doing? And then afterwards, that was for Creative Block, I think. I was there. And I had a little book stand where they could buy the book and I would sign it. And I was like, this is so embarrassing. And I sat down at my little table. They all lined up. And they all came up and got it signed. And I told I tell kids this story all the time. If you have kids, tell them this story. So the first two guys that came up, and again, it was mainly men, and most of my readers are women. And so these two guys came up. And I said, oh, great talk. Oh, and I said, so what do you do at PIXAR? And the first guy said, I was the head animator on Up. Cool. And I was like, oh, yeah. And then the guy beside him was like, oh, and I did all the, I can't remember, lighting on Finding Nemo or something. I'm like, awesome. And then, but being a creative person in advertising for all those years, I know all of us had a side hustle. All of us had something we were interested in besides MTS. And so Manitoba Telecom. And so I said, what do you do on the side? So the Up guy, he'd said, oh yeah, I did, blah, blah, blah for Up. I'm like, cool. So what do you do on the side? And he's like, well, I draw and stuff, but and I was like, pardon? I couldn't even hear him. He's like, well, I draw, but I've lost my mojo and I'm really not sure how to get it back. And I was like, what? And so I say to the other guy, oh, what do you do on the side? He's like, well, I'm a photographer, but I'm not trained. I just like to take pictures on the weekend. And I was like, holy shit, this is crazy. So there was about 50 people in the line, and I did it with everyone. What do you do at PIXAR? Full volume. What do you do on the side? Well, I make these little kids. And so I tell kids this story all the time because, I took my son, I spoke there a couple of times. I took my son when he was 9. He got to see The Good Dinosaur in their VIP theater before it was in theaters. And he's in university now and I think headed towards filmmaking. And I wonder if it was this experience. And my friend that works there gave us this big tour. We were there for 5 hours. It was a Saturday. There was nobody there. And we got to see everything. And Charlie, he's not an artist, but he's a great writer. And so Vincent said, oh, Charlie, do you make art? Because most kids do. And Charlie said, no, I don't really like drawing. I'm more of a writer. And Vincent said, oh, well, let me take you to the writing department. And Charlie just looked at me like, what? So we went to the writing department, and he showed him where the writers and the art directors meet to decide what the characters that the writers have written about. The art directors are going to decide what they're going to look like, and they work together and whatever. And we were there for hours, and we left, and Charlie said, Mommy, that was the best day of my life. Aww. Because it made him realize, they're just people. Mm-hmm. They're just people, and this is where they work. And me talking to them and realizing that they get stuck too, and that they have all these insecurities about their own work. Every time something like that has happened to me, it's just like, oh my gosh, we're all just people. Yeah. And if I can go to PIXAR and sweat through my sweater and have these guys, a couple of them cried, I was just like, okay, well then when TED Talks calls and say, hey, you want to stand up on this stage? I'm thinking, hell no. Okay. And then I go, and it seems terrifying, but then they give you a Beyonce mic, and then everything's okay again. So, I just keep showing, and then Dan Nelken calls and says, will you come here and sit? And I was like,
I'm too nervous. I can't do it.
I'm too nervous.
I was just thinking about going back to like what our teacher said to you. Like, could you imagine if Charlie is in school and a teacher said you should never make films again? Like, what would you do?
I would throat punch that.
Yeah.
The rage, I can't even understand the rage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I'm
Yeah.
gonna know. I don't even know what's next. So your second book, we've kind of talked about like the I don't knows just keep coming, and you then wasn't a Q&A.
But I should say though, there was 15 years of the I don't knows where I did nothing.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do this, I don't know how to do that, and I was just like, I will do nothing.
But Jealous Curator isn't nothing. Is that?
No, well, that was
but
when
you didn't
Jealous
create
Curator
for yourself.
started.
Yeah.
Like, I did nothing for 15 years and then started the Jealous Curator.
I want to flip through. This was you in 2013. I'll read it, Danielle. If you big cup of coffee and a bunch of editing on book number 2. How am I lucky enough to spend my day doing this? Crazy. Like, do you still feel that way today?
Yeah, absolutely. I pinch myself all the time.
So this is your inner critic is a big jerk. I didn't realize, maybe subconsciously, but a line I use a lot when I sign my books. A few of them I've signed. I say, your inner critic is a ding dong. That's kind of what I say, and I don't know. Maybe I owe you another apology.
Probably.
I'm not sure I do.
I'll send you an invoice. Well, this was supposed to be your inner critic is an asshole.
Oh, really?
And it was right before the book we were supposed to be done, and Barnes & Noble said they wouldn't carry it, which you want Barnes & Noble to carry it. And so my editor said, would you mind changing it to something like Big Jerk? And I was like, like that kind of loses the anger, like the oomph. And I was like, all right, fine. And so Martha Rich is one of my favorite artists in the world, and she was illustrating it. And I was like, we had to submit 5 possible covers. I'm like, let's put an ass on one. Let's put a donkey on one. So that at least it's in there subliminally, like for us. And this was the cover they picked. And we were like,
That's awesome. Do you know what's funny, though, when I think about, like, this was probably 5 years ago. I was in the airport about to get on a plane. And there was about 6 books that had the, like, F this, F that in the title. Like, people are buying them now.
I know. And so the new book I pitched had the word bullshit in it, because this book is all about all the bullshit artists have to face, and just like calling it out and being like, here's how to dodge it when it's on your path, because it will be like dealing with galleries, bullshit. Like there's one chapter that's mothers can't be successful artists. It's just bullshit. And so right, and so bullshit should be in the title. They said no. They said it's very 5 years ago. So I was setting the trend with asshole, got that scrapped, and then there was the give a whatever, how to not give a fuck book. Those are all bestsellers. Then I'm like, okay, and they're like, yeah, that's kind of passé to put a swear word in.
But you can put a bull on the cover.
I could put a bull. I'll call Martha. Yeah.
So this is a writer that we worked with. She was on your team, and she said, congrats on the second book. Damn, I'd better get to work on my first one. And here's her book.
Yeah.
And this is also like, I don't want to give you too much credit, but like writing my book, and Dave DeHaas, who sat behind, he wrote a book. Yeah. And I don't know how many books, and a lot of it, I think you can take credit. Like being so close to someone who is constantly creating, I'm sure, I know. And
it also puts it in perspective, like the PIXAR thing. It's like, I'm just a person. I'm a person that you guys know. And it's like, well, God, if Danielle can do it, but it is true. Like when you see people close to you doing stuff, it kind of makes you realize that the I don't knows aren't as scary, because it's like, well, if they figured it out, surely I can figure it out.
But it's a weird thing, I think this is maybe why, because even on my path, I've not done, an eighth of what you've done. But I noticed that the first people I've heard from on this journey were like in other countries, and I think maybe some of it is when you see someone do something that you're close to and you're proud of them, maybe that feeling of, but I'm not making anything is so strong that it doesn't allow you to say, hey, I'm so proud of you. And I think it wasn't until I started creating that I could do something like this and be like, it's amazing what you're doing, and to just celebrate you. And I think maybe that's probably why, didn't hear from, I don't know if you hear from people, if it was the same for you. It's like other countries, yeah.
No, I don't. It's funny. I don't hear from any of my advertising people.
Wow.
Maybe it's because I just deuced out. Bye. And just never came back. I was like, see you in a year. And then I never came back. I don't know. But Mary Jo, Dion, and I have stayed in touch. Does anybody know Mary Jo? She's a writer. I love your house. Has anybody done The Artist's Way? Right? Have you done all of it? So many people have not done the whole thing. So when Charlie was 2 and before the Jealous Curator, I was feeling really lost, and my hairdresser kept saying, there's this book called The Artist's Way, you should do it. And I didn't, and I'd come back 6 weeks later, and she'd be like, did you buy it? And I'm like, no. And then this went on for months and months, and so I finally bought it, and one of the things, and I pretended I spent $5,000 to do it like a course, because you're supposed to do a chapter a week for 12 weeks. And it's hard. There's a lot of stuff. And Greg was so supportive, and he was just like, no, I've got Charlie, like, just pretend you're doing your whole, like, that you paid money and you're doing it. So I did it. And one of the things you're supposed to do is write a letter to somebody who you are jealous of. And so I picked Mary Jo. And I didn't know her very well at the time. Like, we'd worked together like we had, but we weren't friends. And but Mary Jo, she's a force to be reckoned with. She always has a million things. Like, she had started a small dog rescue, and she did a fundraiser, and she ended up doing it at the Playboy Mansion somehow.
Yeah, I know.
Like, how?
Yeah.
You know, and like just all these things. Just like somehow Mary Jo was doing this stuff, and it was the I don't knows. I was like at home with a baby, and I was like, I don't know who this woman is. But she was a contemporary, and I had worked with her, and I was like, okay. And what I was jealous of was she just seemed to always be creating, and always, like, nothing seemed to stop her. Like, somehow she made all this stuff happen. So we went for coffee on Granville Island, and I read her my letter, and I said, I'm very jealous of you. And she was in the middle of drinking a latte, and she did a spit take.
Yeah.
And she had foam on her nose, and she laughed and laughed. She's like, what are you talking about? She's like, I am so jealous of you. I think I just started Jealous Curator. And she was like, and she wanted a baby. Like, and she, you know, she's like, you're still being creative, but you're this mom, and you're this, and so we had this little love fest where it turns out she was jealous of me for a million things. I was jealous of her for a million things. She didn't think, she said, I feel like I've got 100 pots on simmer, but nothing's boiling. So she didn't think she was amazing. And so we had, and it was the first time that I ever out loud said to someone, I'm jealous of you, and this is why. And she's now one of my best friends because we actually shared. And you know, that was what the blog gave me. Gave me this community of people that I could talk to who got it, who, I'm just, one of my current art series collages that I'm doing is called Undefeated. And they're these giant trophies. And
I have it.
Oh, do you have them?
Yeah.
And that's the whole point, is to celebrate not only ourselves but other people and lift everyone up.
Awesome. I went back to show your book instead of Elle's.
She's not even here.
This is something I read recently. Like, every action is an act of service. Like, the things we're creating. So even if there's not a great response, you know, we want to create these things. We want people to like it. We want more than 6 people to like our blog post. But I mean, I read this recently related to even diet, like the choices you make. You know, like, you can lead in that way. Whether I fail all the time with like the cookies and the sweets for my kids, but when I think about the choices I make or doing things, it's not just for me. It's like, even if it sucks, and I know, because not that your stuff sucked, it didn't, but I know that when someone is in your vicinity and is creating, how much it helps. So just like confront the I don't knows, do the hard thing, because even if you're not a crazy success off the bat, you are like making a difference. Collage, another book. I'm going to just, this, a big important art book now with women. So, so we talked about your experience in like the corporate world, and then as an artist in school, again it came up, and then again as an artist that you can't create funny work. Imagine on Instagram, like, what is it like in the art world specifically now? Are you finding that because your work is quirky? Yeah, go. What's coming to mind?
I'm just like waiting for the reaction from all the female artists in the audience who are like, ugh.
Yeah.
No, I get great response now.
Yeah.
But I do think, like, thanks to, there's lots of bad things about social media, but the good thing is community. And so I have found my community, and so they're very supportive of the things I'm doing. I'm also finally really proud of what I'm doing, and I put it out there with confidence where I didn't used to. But the art world, just like everything else, is so skewed for the prices that women can sell their art at, the exposure we get in really great galleries. Like, it's getting a lot better. But when I was in art school, which is where this kind of came from, I minored in art history, and so and I loved art history so much. And I was 19, and I was going to be an artist when I grew up. And so, I was in a theater like this, looking at slides of work, and I remember, like, maybe a month in, I was like we hadn't even heard about Frida Kahlo yet. Like, it was all men up until that point. So I put up my little hand, and my prof was amazing, but I said, where are the women? Like, were there no women? And he said, of course, there were thousands and thousands of women making amazing work, but, quote, they weren't considered worthy enough to document by the historians of the time. And I remember thinking, oh, fuck that. And I remember thinking, I'm going to document them. But I didn't, I remember clearly having that thought, but I was like, I don't know how. Like, but I was mad, and I was like, well, I'm going to do it. Cut to like 30 years later. But, and so every time I have a book and I go on a tour, I take Greg's advice and I look for patterns, because there's always a pattern. Even tonight, when I chat with people after, there will be a pattern in the thing, in the topics that come up. It's the weirdest thing. And so when I was traveling for Big Jerk, so many people kept telling me stories about, like, women not getting their the spotlight on them. And so I thought, I want to write a big, important, like, I own so many big, important art books. I have a pop art book that's about that thick. There were so many cool women making pop art. It's that thick. There's not one woman in the whole book. It's like, how is that possible? And that wasn't that long ago, And so I thought, I'm going to write a big, important art book, but only with women. So I'd already had 3 successful books. The Oprah thing had happened. Like, it was all going great. I pitched this to 7 publishing houses. 6 of them said no, because they said no one would read a book about women. That was in 2017.
Crazy.
That was right before all the Me Too stuff happened. But it only takes one publisher to say yes. So one publisher, they're the ones publishing the new book too, Running Press. They said yes, and they gave me full support. They let me do whatever I wanted. This was the working title, and then I was like, can we just make this the title? And they were like, hell yeah, we can. And this was really great, because a whole bunch, and not that I don't think my book was the reason, but a whole bunch of books about women artists came out in the years following. I think because this is my biggest success so far, like money-wise, sales-wise. And so I think the publisher started to be like, oh, people will buy books about women. And so they've bought a lot more titles, and so there's a lot more books, which, I always say, like, I feel like, especially this book, I'm proud of all of them, and I finding out that somebody started making art again because they read one of my books. There's my success. I don't need anything else. But this is so huge to me that 19-year-old little kid said, I'm going to do this, not really having any thought of how or when or why. And then I was like, in the hindsight, I was like, holy shit, I did it. And I could not be more proud of
awesome.
that book.
It's funny, like, the theme, because when you were an art director, but you were on the web side.
Yeah.
Like websites back then, but which was really new. Like, so
yeah,
that
we were very much less than in the world of
it was like, we'll do web banners.
Yeah.
And it was even the other side where I sat was like, oh, well, the big idea, and then they will just do it.
We'll just give them whatever.
But even a blog, even though you said everyone in the world had a blog, like,
you don't think
really
so?
True? No, I know that's like back then. But when I think of people that we knew, like, I don't think that was true.
No, that's
And then Instagram, like, and then I don't know. I think the podcast is coming up soon. Oh, look at these shoes! You make things. You just make.
I put my art on some Vans.
Let's talk about kids' books. Because I think lots of people will think throughout their lives about writing a book of some kind, and then you've done that. But I think all of us too will have thoughts, especially if we have kids, of writing a kid's book. That's something you always wanted to do, and obviously kids' books, like from an illustration standpoint and visually, your combination of your ability to write and tell stories. So what was it like? Let's just look at a couple of the covers.
This was like a dream come true. I wrote my first children's book when I was 7, under a bush in our front yard. I had a merch plan. There was going to be lunch boxes and stuffies and stickers. I had the whole thing planned out, literally. And then it only took me 40 years to actually write the real one. So I'd had the idea for how to spot an artist. And again, this came from a pattern. So when I was traveling with a big, important art book, the pattern that came up in chatting, and it was crazy. I traveled all over the place for that book. And I'm not joking when I say at least 1,000 people. I wish I'd kept track. I'm sure it was over 1,000 people on that tour told me when they were waiting to get their book signed that when they were either 6, 7, or 8, someone told them they couldn't be an artist when they grew up. A teacher or a parent or something. It was something in that time. And now I'm meeting them when they're 40, 50, 60, and they're looking for a jump start. They're looking to try and figure out how to start making again after all those years. And that just breaks my heart because I didn't have that. I didn't get squashed till university. My parents were so supportive, right? And so I thought, okay, well, I could write another kid's book. Another grown-up book, or I could scooch around to the front and talk to these people when they are 6, 7, or 8 and plant a different seed in their head that says, psst, if anyone tells you can't be an artist, you absolutely can. There were no swears in the titles of these books. And so I went to my editor at Chronicle, who I was with for the first couple of books. She left and started her own literary agency. And so she said, will you be my client? So she's now my agent. And so I went to her and I said, I want to do a kid's book. And she said, no. She said, they are very competitive. It's a different kind of writing. You're not known for that. I know you have a kid, and I'm like, no, that's not why. I want to do it because of this. And she was like, yeah, no. Then my dad died. And I told my dad about this book idea. And of course, being my biggest cheerleader, he thought it was brilliant and award-winning and I should do it. And then he died very suddenly. And so I was kind of lost because, as you can tell from all the stories I've told, my dad was sort of my biggest cheerleader. And I just remember thinking, it was Christmas time, and I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to write this book. Like Kate said, no, but I'm just going to approach it like it's like an art project. So I just wrote the story, and I illustrated it, and I basically made it like a little Word doc, and then I emailed her in January. I emailed her. I'm like, I'm done. She was like, what? I didn't write a pitch or anything. I just did the book, and I sent it to her. And her daughters were 5 and 3 at the time, and she read it to them, and she said that she cried at the end of it, and the girls were like, I can't. I don't know if this is everyone's dream. It was certainly my dream. The rainbow carpet and all the little kids at my feet. I wore sparkly sequin shoes because I figured they'd like that. And I got to hold my book and read to these kids. And it was amazing. It was everything like that I wanted. The first time I read at Powell's, Charlie was 6. And he was in the very back, just Greg grabbed him a bunch of books so that he wouldn't fidget, And so it's the Q&A, and they said, okay, we have time for one more question. And Charlie put up his hand, and I said, yes, the young man in the back. And he said, Mommy, can I buy this Minecraft book? I said, Yes,
awesome.
yes, you can. And then he came with me when I got to read to the kids, and he's 6'6" now. He was 17 or something at the time, and so he couldn't even sit on the little chair. So he was standing in the back, and afterwards he gave me a big hug and told me how proud he was of me. And yeah, it's pretty neat to have done all of this, with him, like growing up through all of it. Yeah.
Now you get to be his biggest cheerleader.
I sure am. Yep.
Yeah. Let's talk briefly about. We could.
I can't talk briefly, as you can see.
Well, I only have one slide on this, but you did over 250 episodes. But here's a quote from Ron Swanson. He's the Department of Parks and Rec. Said, "Never half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing." But you are doing a lot of things.
Yeah,
like, how do you? There's a lot of asses. How do you do? Because I know for me, like, the first thing, writing a book, I couldn't possibly think about anything else. Like, I couldn't do anything else. And now I'm working on something else. And I feel like I need to compartmentalize kind of the way you do. Where these days for this and these days for that. But like to think in the beginning, it was just a blog. And then it's Instagram. And you had a podcast. And you're writing books. And you're doing talks. And you're doing workshops. Substack. It's ridiculous. And then you stopped the podcast recently.
I stopped the podcast a couple of years ago because I had 250 episodes, and I thought that's quite a few.
Yeah.
Also, I have major phone phobia. Like, I don't like to order pizza.
Really?
Because I don't know what the guy's going to say. So my husband forces me to it. The deal is I have to call for pizza, and he'll go pick it up. Yeah. And I'm like, I'll go pick it up. And he's like, no, you have to call. So the podcast was good for the first 20 episodes because it was people I knew. So I could. Yeah. I'm such a control freak that I could predict that it was going to go pretty good. Right. I knew. Interested in what you're doing in your work, and she said, how would you feel about working together? Like, she hates the word mentor, but that's what it was. And I was like, what? And this was at the very beginning of COVID, and she's in New York and I'm in the Okanagan, and we started meeting every 2 weeks on Zoom, and she mentored me. So that was a huge thing that came out of the podcast. I started making the work I'm making now because of the podcast, because I had Wayne White on. Do you guys know who Wayne White is? Remember Pee-wee's Playhouse? Mm-hmm. So Wayne did all the puppets and a lot of the voices. He did the sets, just amazing artist. And now he does paintings and sculptures. And his paintings are hilarious. They're thrift shop paintings, cheap landscapes, but then he paints words into them, beautifully done, but they're all swears and they're ridiculous. He's from Chattanooga, plays the banjo, but he lives in LA now. And when he started, and I obviously am slightly obsessed with him and his story, so I knew all of this. And I knew that when he started showing in LA, the gallerists were like, yeah, but it's not real art because it's funny, And I knew this was sort of part of his story. And so I had said on the podcast, and also side note, I had a garbage can beside me when I called him because I thought I was going to throw up from the nervousness because I could not believe I was talking to Wayne White. And that, this is the phone phobia that was legit real. But he was so kind. And so I said, and every second word out of his mouth is a swear. And I said, so when these galleries told you that, fine art can't be funny, I'm clearly trying to investigate my issues. And I said, when they said it couldn't be funny, what did you think? He goes, well, I just said, fuck it. And it was like a lightning bolt moment. I was like, and this had been 20 years since I graduated from art school. And I was like, oh my God. Yeah, fuck it. And I was like, how have I allowed a teacher from 20 years ago to have control over the kind of work I'm making, the way that I'm making it, when Wayne can just go, fuck it, to the entire LA gallery system, you know? And I was just like, oh my God. So it was right before the Christmas holidays, and so I decided I'm not going to be, all the advice I give everybody else, don't be precious, don't buy the perfect canvas, I just ripped up a whole bunch of little squares of paper, like 20 of them. Didn't even cut them with an X-Acto blade so that they couldn't possibly be perfect. Put them all out, went and bought paint, because I hadn't had paint for 20 years, went and bought paint, and just started playing, just started making one brush stroke on every page. And I'm a collage artist, so I have bowls of tiny people. And so I put the tiny people on the swoosh. Not every tiny person belongs on every swoosh. So I would wait until a story popped into my mind. I put it down, and if a story popped into my mind, like I got glued down, and the titles were hilarious. They were like a sentence or two long. And I was in my studio for probably 8 or 9 hours. I didn't eat. You know, when you get in that zone, my husband was like, and I'm laughing in there by myself, like, and he kind of like opened the door. He's like, everything okay, you know? And I was 42, and I was like, I have not had fun making art since I was 17 years old, and I am having a blast. And it was because of Wayne just saying, fuck it, like what, just do what you want. And that was the beginning, and that was all because of the podcast. The reason I stopped the podcast was after mentoring with PETA. She, you know, Charlie was in school full time now, and he was busy with his sports and his friends and stuff. And she said, can you give me 5 hours a day in the studio? Well, I've never done 5 hours. I'll maybe do a Saturday afternoon and then wonder why I'm not getting anywhere. So PETA said, can you give me 5 hours a day? And I was like, oh my gosh, I actually can. But that meant cutting the podcast, because the podcast took me about 24 hours a week, which is a big chunk of your week. And I thought, okay, something needs to give. Like, I can't do all of this. I'm gonna crack. So if I'm really gonna do the art thing, something has to go. And I figured 250 episodes, I can let that go.
You did it.
Yeah.
TED Talking. So you've done 2. You wore black both times. You wore my outfit.
Sorry about that.
So the first one, the theme was your inner critic is a big jerk. And the second one, most recently, it was in Nashville, and it was 7 ways to cut creativity out of your life.
Completely. Yeah. Cut creativity out.
Just going from the first to the second, like how terrifying was the first one, and then take us from that one to the second? Were you more prepared, or probably?
The first one wasn't too bad. Mary Jo was there too, and she was talking right before me, so that helped, although she was so good, and I was like, well, that's not great to follow. Which was perfect, because my talk was about inner critic, so I was like, perfect. Nashville was so scary. Look at that theater. It was at the Tennessee Symphony Hall. They told me the day before, they said the directors of it were like, we think your talk is so fun and uplifting, so we've put you first. And so I'm in the green room with all the other people. We're doing the sound checks and stuff. It's terrifying already. And all the other people were like, I'm so glad I'm not you. Great. And TED, you're not allowed speaker notes. And it has to be 18 minutes, and you have to just have it memorized. And when you go out there, there's a clock that only you can see. The audience can't see it. And it says 18 minutes, and as soon as you start talking, it starts counting backwards. It's like 17:59, and you're like, oh my God. And so you start talking really fast, and your slides. So it was terrifying. But I had it so memorized that I'm just doing it. And I had this moment in my head where I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing it. And then I was like, oh, no, focus, because I knew that it was just going to go blank, and I'd be like, and then I knew if I lost my train of thought, I'd never but I did it. I nailed it.
Awesome.
I walked off the stage, and my girlfriend that had come with me, she'd been telling me up until then, because I've been practicing at the airport, practicing it over lunch, she's like, you've got this. Like, this is amazing. You're ready. I came back off after. She's like, oh my God, I can't believe you didn't fuck up. I thought you said I had this. She's like, oh no, I didn't. I thought you were going to screw up for sure. I was like, oh, awesome.
So how did you feel after?
We went day drinking.
Yeah.
I felt great. It was just, I'd been practicing it. What was supposed to be in 2020. It was supposed to be March 2020. So of course it got shut down, and they're like, we'll do it in May. Because none of us realized. So I was still practicing it until May, and then they're like, okay, the world is now shut down. So in 22, they brought it back. I changed it a bit, but not really. So I'd had this thing in my head for 2 years, and so just being able to say it and nail it and be done was so great. And the poor guy that went right after me, I was already gone day drinking, so I didn't know this happened. But he walked out, he started, he was about 2 minutes in, and he went completely blank. And he was like, just a second. And he went off stage, took a breath, came out, and started again. Because once you lose your spot, he couldn't figure out, he needed to do it in that 18-minute thing he'd memorized. So he came back out, and then he nailed it.
Wow.
But it
can happen, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it can happen. Just
I
because.
wish you didn't tell me that.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Don't memorize anything. Speaker notes are a really good thing.
I have some notes here. I don't normally do it. But, and you're the one who has to talk most of the time. We'll talk about thinking big. Like, obviously, when this started, you weren't thinking big, but I know I reached out to you. I never ended up going through a publisher, but you had said, go to the U.S., reach out to someone like an agent in the U.S. Obviously, they do tend to think bigger there, and it's a bigger audience. But I guess, when was it in your career as a Jealous Curator and Danielle Krysa where you started thinking bigger globally? Like, you had to learn that?
I don't know if I ever did. I think opportunities came up, and I said yes to them. I'm getting a lot better now at being like, I've got this idea, and I think I can make it happen, and I'm going to try. But, okay, let's just get really honest, even though this is being filmed.
Cut.
Yep. Snip this part.
Yeah.
No, lately I've sort of had this thing of, I'm super grateful for everything, but I feel like I'm on this precipice that I can't tip over. Like, I feel like I've gotten as high as I can, and I want more, and I cannot get there. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how to do it. Does anybody follow Ashley Longshore? Yeah, right? She's a good friend of mine. She's this artist. She's now in New York. She is a force to be reckoned with. She was on Late Night with Seth Meyers, the first visual artist to be on since Andy Warhol, to be on a late night talk show. She was a guest on Project Runway. Like, she's just, I don't know how she does it. Like, she just does all these crazy things. And I wrote about her. I was one of the first people to write about her, and really it helped get her going. I mean, she is a force, so she was going to be going whether I wrote about her or not, but it did help. And then I've just watched her fly by me, and so that's where I am right now. And I don't want to sound not great. About manifestation, where like we'll say something, we're like manifestation, because I think that is it. Like, I think when you say it out loud, even if you aren't quite sure what it is, if you say it out loud, the universe kind of hears it, and then kind of weird things can happen, you know. So like I had this. Sometimes people will do this at the beginning of a year, that 100 list, where you write 100 things that you want, and it can be, a donut, write a children's book, like it can, And so I did that. And then I put it away for 2 years. And when I went back and looked, I'd done like 50 of them. Yeah, and I didn't even really remember they were on that list. But I think there's something about the manifestation of like thinking about it, writing it down. One of the things on that list that hasn't happened, hold a baby orangutan. I still want that to happen.
Bring him out. I wish. Could you imagine? I wish I knew. If we had more than 3 weeks, I would have done it.
If we'd had 4 weeks to plan this, for sure.
Yeah. I just want to talk a little bit about thinking different, because I know, and not in a creative sense. It's actually the opposite. Because I think what stops a lot of creative people is I can come up with ideas, I can create things, but like when it comes to discipline, structure, just like you said, you have to like also think like a business. If you're creating content daily, like I remember you were kind of that way before, even like in a professional way. Like you were very organized and on it. And then has that played a big role in this?
Yeah. I'm a list maker. There's spreadsheets. There's organization, and especially like for writing the book. Like I have like, you know, I consider the chapters buckets, and so then I have like a little spreadsheet where I can throw random thoughts I have into that bucket, so that when it's time to write, I have the thing, you know. And so and for all my collage scraps, I have like, you know, an envelope of flowers, an envelope of royal family, an envelope whatever, so that I can kind of feel. I mean, I think that's also motherhood. Like if you're going to get anything done, you need to be organized, or nothing is ever happening. So I think between being a creative director and then being an at-home mom, I honed those skills.
I need to work on those skills. I want to talk a bit about how, actually, I chat GPT just to see what they said. Legacy and impact. Through her books, blog, and podcasts, Danielle Krysa has helped countless artists and creatives navigate their own journeys. And it said, her work continues to inspire those dealing with creative blocks, making her a key figure in the conversation around art, self-doubt, and resilience. Pretty good, right? No kidding. Chat GPT. But like, you touched on briefly your friend who you writing about her helped her. Like, I imagine you've done that for a lot of people. Like, what do you know, like, in feedback have you got, or how many submissions do you get?
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I like events like this. Like, I like talking to people after, because, you know, you find out that maybe somebody hadn't made art for 15 years. And then they heard me talk, or they read my book, and they realized they weren't alone either. And then now they're artists, or they just had a show, or like they've done the thing that they wanted to do. And I can't tell you how many times I've cried, they've cried, like, and that's the drug that keeps me going, you know.
Your whole, like the whole Jealous Curator has been celebrating other people.
Yeah, and I think because art school was so bad and I felt so alone, and so to have a community and to feel not alone and to feel like we can lift each other up instead of crushing each other down. I mean, I was crushed for 3 years. What was the point of that?
Well, it's like you had said earlier about people who study psychology need it most. It's like you kind of give what you need most often, right?
Yeah.
Hey, look. We covered PETA. That's PETA. Doesn't know what a podcast is, but she does.
Yeah,
know. This is something I stole from that you shared a long time ago. Yeah. Self-deprecation. It's not humility. It's humiliation. That stood out to me because I think I can be quite self-deprecating.
Canadian.
Yeah, exactly. But I love that because I think you can go too far with it.
Yeah.
And did you have a relationship with self-deprecation? You shared that. I don't know. Yeah.
No, I just, that really struck a nerve. And one of the little tips in my talks that I give and that I told the kids today is one of the best ways around this and around your inner critic is just 2 words. Thank you. So when someone says, Dan, I read your book, I loved it. What do you say? Thank you. And then you stop talking. Because what we tend to do, I joke in my talks that I've got everything, when I'm in the States, I always say I've got everything against me because I'm an artist, I'm a woman, I'm a mother, and I'm Canadian. So I basically just apologize for existing. So when somebody says, I love your book, I love your this, I love your that, you say thank you, and then you stop talking. Because your inner critic is like, you know, if someone says, oh, I love your collage, my instinct is to say, oh, thanks. But I didn't really have the paper that I wanted. And also, like, I don't love this corner. And I was going to frame it, but like, and your inner critic, Arlo, is just like, this is exactly what Arlo wants. But if you can just, and you're humiliating yourself. Like, why?
Yeah, just own it.
And somebody just said something nice about something that you're proud of. So say thank you, and then shut up. And I always joke that it also makes you much more fun to talk to at a party than being a Debbie Downer.
Yeah, yes,
right?
totally.
Yeah.
Shadow careers. Have you heard of what a shadow? Oh, Stephen Pressfield. You know, so he's a great writer. But sometimes when we're terrified of embracing our true calling, we'll pursue a shadow calling instead. That shadow career is a metaphor for our real career, the one we really want. Its shape is similar, maybe an art director when you want to be an artist. Its contours feel tantalizingly the same, but a shadow career entails no real risk. If we fail at a shadow career, the consequences are meaningless to us. Which is, I think, for me too, being like a copywriter, and then for you to see your evolution to go from, well, I'm still not an artist, I'm a jealous curator. But then where we end up is now you are creating. Would you think the shadow career for you? Yeah.
I was on a plane coming back from somewhere as the jealous curator, flying around telling other people to get past your stuff and make work and blah. And then I was on this plane and I was like, oh my God, what a hypocrite. Because I wasn't making my art and showing my art and all these things. And I remember thinking, oh, exactly what I did with design as a place to hide out from art, I was doing with the Jealous Curator. It was this safe, cozy place where I could tell other people how to get past all this stuff, and but I wasn't doing it. And that was right around the same time I did that interview with Wayne White, and I was like, oh, okay, time to come out of the shadows.
Yeah.
Like, I got to walk the walk.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Here's another one. Like, you can just face that way. I'll have the sore neck tomorrow. It's often said that your specific combination of DNA, your life experiences from childhood up until now, is one of a kind, and that the person you are is somewhere in the order of 1 in 400 trillion. Thus, the odds are long that there has ever been another one of you before, nor will there ever be another you anytime soon. Regardless of whether the math is accurate, the idea is seductive. You are one of a kind. And I feel like you are almost like peeling back the layers as you get to creating for yourself. And you realize that your quirky nature or the things you like, that there is an audience for you, the fact that you're a female, and you know, even the shitty things that were said to you on top of your inner critic. It is amazing to me, this like you are 1 in 400 trillion. If you can just find whatever it is to start creating for yourself. And like obviously that's not the end. Like it wasn't like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's what PETA, I said I was having a frustrating moment about my art and, you know, whatever, and getting places and everything. And I said to PETA, because I'm 50 and almost 52, she's 71, I think. And I said, oh, like, when am I going to figure this out? And she goes, well, hopefully never. And I was like, what? And she goes, how boring would it be? She's like, imagine if you figured it out tomorrow. Then what are you going to do for the next 50 years? And that was one of the most, she just said that to me. She called me on my birthday, and it was the most, like, I was just like, oh, doesn't that feel nice? Because, like, yeah, you don't want to figure it out tomorrow. And what I was saying earlier about starting the Pinterest board and, like, finding your visual voice or finding whatever, you know, your thing, because you really are the only you. And, you know, I wouldn't be the Jealous Curator if that teacher hadn't said that thing. So, you know, like, all of your experiences are just enriching. And yeah, I hope she's right. I hope I'm on my deathbed going, oh, I've got another idea, you know?
This is kind of answered. What is the relationship between Danielle Krysa and the Jealous Curator?
We've become one now.
Yeah.
But anybody who's heard me talk before, I've kept them very separate. They're still a little separate in that when I'm making my work, I will stop and look at it and think, would the Jealous Curator write about this? And if she wouldn't, I keep going and I keep pushing. And if she would write about it, then I know I'm on the right track. So
awesome.
It's a
That's
weird
cool.
separation, but I'm trying to make us one.
That's awesome. Then Danielle Krysa painted again. And so I just have some of your work. I know this isn't the best way to display it, but just for people to get a sense of Danielle's sensibilities in collage work. Arlo.
Yeah, that was a whole show called Shit Arlo Says, and it was all my inner critic.
So I know it was a student or a kid who named Arlo, but Arlo is a boy's name. Yeah. Like my inner critic is a male. Like for you, I guess you didn't. You just stole the kid's idea and said, "I'm
I
going to
still-
run."
No,
with
but
Arlo."
it's always been a male in my head, I think,
Yeah.
because of that teacher.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Fun slinger. Is it? These are cute. What? They're not cute at all. No. This is you. Bring me chips and dip. And then your latest series, Undefeated, I actually want to read because I think it's like a nice kind of full circle moment on what we're doing, from like insecurity to being proud of yourself, and also what this community is about, and celebrating. This is an opportunity to celebrate you and celebrate creativity. Danielle wrote about this series. So many of us have been told, don't be showy, don't be loud, don't be the center of attention, and never ever expect to win the grand prize, the gold medal, first place. Well, I think we should do all of those things. We all deserve the sash, the crown, the ribbon, the badges, the big trophy for the obstacles we faced, how hard we've worked, and if nothing else, to celebrate being proud of who we are. Which I just love, and I think especially, like, it doesn't come naturally to us as Canadians. I think even to celebrate each other, you know, we all kind of move up as a group and down. And then if you look down south right now, they are a country that celebrates their greatness based on individuals. And I think we need to do more of that. And I love that you're doing that, and that you've reached this point in your career where you can celebrate yourself. And this is just a taste. This stuff you really have to see on her website, etc. But this just gives you a taste of what she's done. And you can see her art in these places. That's Instagram, and that's her website. And then I wrote, the Jealous Curator is indeed jealous of Danielle Krysa. And so am I. I'll end it here. This was my moment. I'm so happy, just in case. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Now we do have time for some Q&A. I think I'm going to lose my microphone. Is that right?
So Chris is going to use your microphone in a moment.
Some water.
Here, he's coming here. And so the way we're going to work this, thank you. We are going to take a few questions, and while he's walking out, I'm going to start off because I get that privilege. One of the things that we do when you guys buy tickets is just, hey, what's on your mind? What are you thinking about as you come to this event? And one of the things that came up was this feeling of paralysis. Like, we have such opportunity around social media and reaching out to people and gaining community as you have done, but it's also so paralyzing, you know? And what if your work requires depth and time? It doesn't lend itself to the pace of social media. That was something that came up in a few different ways with people here. So I'd love for you to answer that while people raise their hands and we'll run mics around.
I think we put way too much power into social media. I think if it doesn't work for you, you need to kind of think about it and be like, because some people use it as an excuse, like, oh, you know, I need time, but it's really because they're scared to share their work. So I think you have to reflect a little bit and be like, why don't I want to share? Is it because I need time to develop these ideas and to process, or am I scared shitless about putting this out here and having a troll say something? Because that's valid too. I also think if you're really uncomfortable, don't post to Instagram. That is fine, you know? But come to things like this. Like, make sure you're not in a vacuum. Make sure you're not by yourself, because really the power of Instagram for me is community. And sometimes I'll put stuff out and ask people, like, what do you think of this? And, you know, you get the odd mean thing. I just delete those because I don't know those people and they don't mean anything to me. The people that mean something to me will have value. But yeah, I say, social media didn't used to exist. Something new is coming that hasn't been invented yet. So there's no point in getting ourselves so hung up on something that is, I think, a weird temporary thing that we're in. A little boy said he made me cry. A little boy in grade 7 made me cry today. They, grade 7, like, who here's an artist? Who here's ever heard their inner critic? Cool. And so the teacher at the end said, Danielle's going to hang around, so if anybody wants to come up and ask her questions on their own, well, the lineup, because they didn't want anyone else to hear what they were asking. So this little boy came up, And you know, grade 7 boys can look like they're like 6. So he was really little, and he came up and he said, do you know Sonic the Hedgehog? And I said, sure. And he said, well, I draw Sonic the Hedgehog and all the time, and like I'm quite good at it. And I also, you know the Richmond Night Market? I have a little booth there, and I sell them. And I was like, he's like, I've been doing it for about 3 years, just for donations, you know. And I said, good for you. So I'm thinking that's where, and he said, and I post them on TikTok sometimes, and I was like, cool. And he goes, but I've been getting some really mean comments, and I don't know what to do about that. Oh my God. Like, I just almost cried. Like, and his eyes filled up with tears. And so what I told him was, first of all, I said, that happens to me too. And I said, we should feel sorry for those people because they're obviously mad and sad inside that they have to spend their time saying mean things to people that they don't know. I said, you're being brave and sharing, you know, your artwork with people. And if they have something mean to say, that's their problem. And I said, you need to know that after they've gone to your account, they go to someone else's account and say something mean, and then they go to someone else's account and say something mean. Like, it's about them, it's not about you. And he said, okay. And I said, can you turn the comments off? Because I'm not on TikTok, so I know on Instagram you can turn off. And he said, yeah, I could turn it off. And he goes, but I also get lots of really nice comments. And I said, aha, okay, well, can we focus on them? He's like, it's hard. And I said, I know. And I said, you know when you get a report card back and you have all A's but 1 C and all you can think about is that C? And I said, and he was like, yes, I know about that. And I said, okay, it's the same thing. So let's concentrate on the A's and you can delete the C and move along. And I said, but if you ever get tired of it, you don't have to do it. Just go to the night market. Just show kids at school. And he was like, okay. But I almost cried because it was just out of the mouths of babes. Like, we all feel like that, but, you know, it was just kind of crushing.
Thank you so much. If anyone has any questions, put up your hand. Wait for the mic. I'll run it around. Perfect. And just make sure you speak right into that mic.
Hi. So this isn't a question, but my husband is a vice principal at the school you're at today. And he goes, where are you going tonight? And I'm like, okay, God, I'm going to see the Jealous Curator. You've heard about her for years. And he said, wait, is she from the Okanagan? I'm like, yeah. He goes, you know what? Grade 7 girl came into my office today to grab a, candy or a bottle of water. And she goes, Mr. Lee, I just heard the most amazing talk. This artist came in and she told us all about how hard it was for her, but she's just kept going. And it was so inspiring, and I just had the best day. My husband told me that, and I've followed you all along. I've collected your work, and you helped inspire me. Last year, I quit my job. I shouldn't have, maybe. And I'm making art full time in my basement, and I'm loving it every single day. That's all I'm doing. But I also want to say I had my first rejection, so that's out of the way.
That's okay. That's okay.
So I'd like to thank you for the inspiration as well. So
Thank you so much.
Going up the front there. Coming up. So hand up here. There you are.
Hi. I have been an artist for most of my life, and I've lived as an artist professionally. I started a new medium, which is painting. I've been a sculptor for many, many years. And how do you launch yourself? What do you do? I've got a body of work now that's almost ready to go. How do you, I have been making public art and national monuments and that's my shadow career. Okay. So now I'm doing personal work. How do you launch? Where do you start?
Well, did you guys hear that? So she's a sculptor now. She's painting, and how do you launch that new endeavor? You must have a zillion contacts. I bet you do. Okay, so there's your first assignment. The list maker in me. pour yourself a nice hot cup of coffee or tea or whatever your jam is, and write a list of everyone you know, because you'll be surprised when you actually start thinking about, like, who could I reach out to? And they might be sculptor people, they might be, like in a different camp, but you don't know what they're connected to. And you've built this name and this reputation in this other area. It's still art. I would reach out to a few people and be like, hey, I've got this new body of work, and see what they say, because they might go, oh, well, there's this gallery that I know that blah, blah, blah. Like, to all of you, you don't understand the huge network you have at your fingertips, because you might know one person, but they know 10 people. But they're not going to know what you want to do unless you reach out to that one person. Like, and it can just take... You just have to reach out to as many people as you can. If there's galleries, do you want to show it in a gallery?
I don't even know if I want to show locally in a gallery.
Okay.
At this point, I feel so new as a painter.
Right.
I have been an artist. I have no problems with discipline.
Yeah.
Or practice or confidence.
Okay, so you're at the very beginning of this new extravaganza. So you kind of get to pick your course. You get to pick the route. So if you're like, forget Vancouver, I want to go to New York, London, Shanghai, like whatever, Hong Kong, like there's a lot of like Dubai, like there's amazing things happening everywhere. And that is the beauty of social media. Back in my day, when I graduated from university, you had to take your slides around. And unless you could afford a flight to go to New York and show your slides to someone in New York, you were showing in Victoria. And if there was no galleries in Victoria that rep people like you were out of luck. That is not the case anymore. So here's another list for you to write. Where would you want to show? Don't worry that you haven't shown before. Don't worry about that. Sky's the limit. Where would you want to show? And then go do a little bit of research. Like, okay, so let's pick New York. So go and do some searching around. Find the galleries, not just the galleries that you love, but galleries that actually show work that is similar to yours. Because then you know that they would take you on their roster. My mistake when I started was that I would just pick a gallery I loved and not even look at their roster, and then they'd reject me. I'd get a rejection and be like, oh, I suck. No, I just went to the wrong gallery. Like, they were never going to pick me because they know they're collectors. They know their collectors aren't going to buy that. Even if they liked me, it was the wrong fit. So find your fit, and then you just can reach out. Like, they're very open to reaching out. Like, that's how it is now. Some of them will be like, we're not taking submissions. That's not a rejection. They're not taking submissions. Don't take that as like I do suck. Nope. They just aren't taking submissions right now. And so it's a lot of legwork at the beginning. I'm kind of in the same spot right now because with my own artwork, because my friend Martha, who did the ass for my book, she's in Philly. She is so talented. She is so good. She's like, I cannot sell in Philly. Nobody wants my work. It's quirky and weird and whatever. She said, after trial and error of trying different places, there are 2 galleries, one in Joshua Tree, California, out in the middle of the desert, and this tiny town in Texas. And these 2 galleries, she sells out before the art is even on the wall, because the gallery is a right fit and the collectors are a right fit. She's like, I could try and, have a show in Seattle. I wouldn't sell anything, or would or maybe she will, and that will be another place for her. But it's trial and error, which is exhausting. But it really is finding the gallery that is a right fit for you, the right city. So it's a lot of research on your part right now to go and find stuff that looks like yours and that might be a fit. And then, this feeds into the new book about bullshit, check out who's on their roster and then contact those artists. Email them and be like, hey, I'm interested in, possibly working with the gallery that you're with. What's your experience been like? Because they might go, oh, I'm trying to get out of my contract and they do not pay me and they're not promoting me properly, and then you can dodge a bullet. Or they'll say they're amazing and you can go, great, thanks so much. And, it's really up to us to do a lot of the legwork, but then it pays off so much.
Is our current economic situation, which we know, is that a concern? Is that something that you bear into consideration, or is it something just, just full steam ahead?
It ain't great. It is not great, obviously. Like those pieces, the trophy pieces, I just showed those in Portland. I thought they were all going to sell. They're $3,000 each. I thought, that's not crazy. Nothing. Like, they're just not. And so, which is heartbreaking. And my inner critic gets in my head and tells me that that's because they're not good enough. But I know they are good enough. I know that it's the economy. It's in the States. People are holding on to their money. And I was thinking about this actually while I was brushing my teeth this morning, that the thing is, economy, politics, da-na-na-na. Artists have always and will always make because we can't not. So forget all that stuff. Like, it is what it is. We can't change it. We can't control it. All you can do is keep on making because that's what we do.
What are your thoughts? Sorry, just one more. What are your thoughts about, say, searching for an agent?
Yeah, I don't know very much about agents, especially in Canada. Are there art agents? I don't know. There are in the U.S., and it's worth reaching out. Borders don't really... Yeah, a couple of months ago, this would have been different. Maybe the UK, but no. I think I don't think that borders matter. Like my literary agent's in the U.S. My new publisher's in the U.S. The kids' books publisher was in Germany. So I think just find your people wherever those people are. The world is a lot smaller than it used to be. And email, you can reach out, you can Zoom. You don't have to fly anywhere. You can just do a Zoom call. So
Perfect. We got another one right over here.
Do you have insights and advice to share with us if we have lots of directions we could go into, especially later on when we've tried stuff? And I bet there's a number of multi-hyphenates in the room. And as I hear your story and see your body of work, I'm like, well, that's a lot of things. And you touched on it with the podcast of going, I had to let that go. And when we think of your friend Oprah saying, you can do anything, but you can't do everything all at once. I know for myself is that there's probably a lot of things I could do next, and I just get stuck in what direction to go into and get tired of it before it takes root. Yeah. So based on just the journey you've gone on, is there something you can share with us on how to decide which direction to go into and also save our energy when there are those, sometimes we feel like we're running into a wall versus that precipice we need to jump off of?
I think that is all gut. And I think for example, back in the day when Etsy first started, I was doing these little collages, and I had a bunch in my little shop, but I did one that was a bear that was screaming a rainbow. Remember those? Everybody was screaming a rainbow. I did embroidery thread coming out of this bear's mouth screaming this prism rainbow. It sold 15 minutes after I put it up. And I was like, oh my God. And so I did another one. I put up, and it sold immediately. And the other ones weren't selling. And then I got people emailing me, asking me to do more bears. And then I was like, oh, I don't want to be the bear rainbow lady. But they were selling. So your inner critic and all that stuff. It feels good to sell stuff, and it feels good to. But I was like, what? I don't want to do this. And so I made a decision that there will be no more screaming rainbow bears. And then people were like, please do it. And same with the podcast. People were like, please bring it back. And it's like, well, I could, but my gut says no. With Jealous Curator, when I started it and everybody had a blog, there were a billion design blogs, and everybody was, had their own fashion blog or interior. There were so many interior design blogs in 2009. But some of them you could tell there was no passion behind it. They were doing it because Target was buying ads on them for $25,000, and people figured it was a really great way to get rich and whatever. But you could tell the ones that were passionate, they're still there today. But the other ones were kind of a flash in the pan. And so I would tell people when I talk, if your passion is rock gardens, then do the thing about rock gardens. Have a blog about rock gardens. And it might not feel like you're going to get the big money from Target, but you're going to find your people, and it's going to lead you down this organic path of things that you truly love. So, don't do the bear screaming a rainbow just because it's popular. Like, and you know in your gut, again, it might be a reflection thing. I'm a big coffee drinker. So it might be a coffee, and you sit down with your pink moleskin notebook and your author sweater, and you just write stream of consciousness about all of those different ideas. And you just have to trust yourself, because there'll be a couple in there that are the thing. And you'll know once you start doing it. If you're not feeling like inspired to get up every day and do that thing, it really quickly becomes clear that nope, that wasn't it. Let it go and move on to the next thing. But you kind of have to really, again, for me, it's list making and stream of consciousness writing. It's just like figuring out, what do I want? And this is good advice for me, saying I don't know what the next thing is. Maybe I need my notebook and to write these things down and be like, what is your true passion, and what could you see doing every single day? And then the thing will come.
Thank you.
Don't do bears screaming rainbows. It's been done.
Did I see another hand over there? I'll come around.
Dan, don't do the bear. Dan's like, I'm on it. I'm going to do that as soon as I get home. Yeah, there's a market for it.
All right, here you go.
Hey, thanks. Nihilistic, introverted creative here.
Hello, welcome.
So one of the problems I struggle with, like, I've settled myself as an in-house creative. That's how I get away from having to do shows or anything like that. I've always had a very standoffish relationship with popularity and fame. I don't want any of that, but I want to share my vision in the creative side actions that I do. Do you have any wisdom for someone like me?
Of course I do. Have you learned nothing thus far? Yes. So when I started Jealous Curator, I was still very aware of my ad world people, because that's sort of where I'd been creative the longest. And I didn't want them to know I was doing it. I don't know, I was embarrassed a little bit, and I wasn't a writer, and I had all these friends that were writers. I also didn't want people to know, I didn't want the fame. I didn't want people to know I was an at-home mom in Steveston. I was like, that's not exactly a loft in Brooklyn, So the Jealous Curator was my pen name. I didn't have my name anywhere on there. I didn't have my picture on there. Nobody knew. For years, people thought the Jealous Curator was a man in London. And I just was like, because I spelled with a U, like color and stuff. And so I was just like, all right. And I just let that be. And it was really good, because it gave me about 2 years. It wasn't until I went to that first conference. It gave me about 2 years just to find my footing without any expectation, without anybody. You could be the next Banksy. Banksy never shows up at shows. There's shows, but he or she, I wonder if Banksy is a woman. Anyway, never shows up at the shows, but is still prolifically creative. So have a pen name. Create under a different name and never, ever show up at anything. Yeah. Yeah.
Oops, we got another one back here.
Thank you, Danielle and Dan, for this amazing talk. So I have a question for you. Thank you for talking about patterns. And a pattern that I have seen in successful people is that they have personas to overcome certain limiting beliefs or struggles. But you mentioned Arlo, which is like your inner critic. But I would like to know more about the other persona that you have to get shit done consistently.
It is funny. Jealous Curator has kind of become that. Danielle Krysa procrastinates a little more than the Jealous Curator, but I think that is just insecurities. Maybe it is a pen name thing. I've been able to kind of have this other, like I live in Summerland, a tiny little town, and nobody there knows what the Jealous Curator is or what I do. I'm Charlie's mom, basically. And I love that. And so maybe the Jealous Curator is my get shit done person. It is really funny because people will say to me when I come to things, they're like, "Oh, you're so different than I thought you'd be." Is that good or bad? And I think it's because I've kind of bought into maybe, I don't know, that's a really good question. I got to think about that a little bit because I think, yeah, it's, maybe I've compartmentalized myself a little bit, and having the pen name for 2 years first and getting my voice under me and getting a point of view and all of that stuff really let me, let this part of me be its own thing. So when I am in Jealous Curator mode, I'm very efficient. Danielle Krysa is not as efficient. Yeah, that's a deep question.
Right on. Great question. We've got time for one more over here. Cheers.
Okay, so I'm a big believer in like highlighting past bullshit that like highlights the present, if that makes sense. And I'm just wondering, through your past design or agency work, what are three top things that you would say that you can highlight today, moving through all of the things that you've gone through and like all the things that you've made? Like, what are three top things that you can kind of utilize today?
Like the bullshit that I learned back then?
Yeah, like even just like characteristics about yourself, like three things that you would say that you learned then that you are like so grateful for now, like,
yeah,
i.e. like time management, like something, I don't know, anything. Yeah.
I think one of the things that I said at the very beginning about like learning how to defend my work and like all the things I had to do when I was presenting to clients, and you know, being able to talk through a creative idea in front of a group, like, you know, of people who are going to pay a lot of money for it. I'm so thankful for that now, because that really helps me when I'm talking about either like pitching a book or you know, when I was at that art show in Portland, like talking to people about the work. Like, I have learned how to confidently talk about it and not do the, oh, well, because as a creative director, can you imagine trying to sell an idea to a client and be like, oh, I don't know if it's that good? They'd be like, what? Time for an agency review. So that was huge. God. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. In art school, I was not conceptual at all. I didn't know how to think like that, and they just didn't teach us how. We were just supposed to know. But like, the worst thing I'd been through at that point was being hungover after pub night. So I had nothing to draw on. But when I worked at Taxi, doing brand development, whatever, it was so conceptual, and like trying to illustrate something through just the logo or through whatever, and having to take your idea from something into a visual, that was huge, and that's really helped me. Composition, like I feel like you're a designer, right? Are you a graphic designer? Okay, so, well, even that too. I find that the things that you learn there, like negative space and composition and all of that, I think working as a graphic designer for so long, now when I make art, it totally reminds me of my design work, like the color choices, the composition, all of that stuff. But it's for me, it's not for a client. And for a long time, because my degree says painting, collage didn't count for me. And it came so easily to me, I think, because I designed for 18 years, that I can do a collage in my sleep, and so therefore it doesn't count. I always joke that you can't spell painting without pain. And because collage has no pain for me, but if I think about it, you know, that 10,000 hours you become an expert, really my design, like working as a designer for 18 years, did that. And now I have finally hit my 50s and figured out, oh, you know, all those things I learned, I can apply to the art that I'm doing now, and it does count, and it is real art. And like Dan said earlier, I can take everything, all these things, good experiences, bad experiences, and they are who I am now. And I can either embrace that, which I'm doing, or shun it, and it's so much better to embrace it.